Now I would like to welcome to the stage, oh, I'm standing up for this part, okay. So obviously we talked about emotional tools and needing them. And for me, I wish I could just say, now I have this tool that I can use forever. Every day I have to remind myself, okay, I have to do things to, where am I moving? Oh, Lord, okay. But one of the people who's really helped me deal with climate anxiety and grief has been our next guest, Tara Brach. Tara, welcome to the stage. Psychologist, author, and meditation teacher, whose podcast everyone should listen to because it's amazing. It's balm for the soul. So welcome to the stage. So glad you're here.
It's a pleasure. And oh my gosh, a big bow to Hannah and Leah. What an amazing energy.
Yes. So we just heard from Hannah and Leah about their challenges, like emotional, and dealing with like a lot of, historic pain around the climate crisis. And we also know that people often burn out working on this, or get paralyzed, or just disconnected by the enormity of it all. So how natural is this? And then how can people cope with this?
Well, it's completely natural to get numb and disconnected. I mean, I think most people, unless there's an immediacy with the contact of the suffering, most of us, it's a little bit abstract. And there's a few reasons. I mean, one of the big reasons is we're not primed to think of planetary change. We're primed to think of what's most immediate that's dangerous. Another is that we get habituated. We're getting used to climate disasters. It's not like, oh my God, it's like, oh, that again, And the deepest, I think, is that it's so traumatizing to really get that we're in a collapse on all levels of life systems. It's so traumatizing that we dissociate. And then what happens when we dissociate is that we freeze, we're not active. There's this leakage of the anxiety that has been talked about.
When you say leakage of the anxiety, it sounds like to me like you're armoring up and trying to sort of not think about it a little bit. And is that what you mean, like the leakage? Like what happens with the leakage of anxiety? What does that mean?
It feels like this background that gets, anxiety gets fixated on whatever's right in front of us. So we might feel like we're anxious what's right around the corner about some presentation we have to do or a deadline. But there's this background of really feeling the fragility of our species and of all life systems. It's in the background.
And what are the perils of being disconnected? Like why, it doesn't sound that, if it's really traumatizing, why should we deal with it?
Yeah, and that's the question, which is if we're disconnected, if we don't feel, we can't adapt and respond. And really, if you think of evolution, if you think of evolutionary history, the way all organisms adapt and respond is they are sensitive to changes in the environment that they need to then mitigate, change their own beings. And that's why we're so slow in responding. And that's why we listen to these two. It's because so many who are in power, have money, make the decisions, are not the ones that are actually directly feeling the suffering.
And are there deeper roots of suffering? Like we spoke before, like the disconnection from the natural world and efforts to dominate, which you see as fear-driven, right? Can you tell us about that? Why that's fear-driven?
Yeah, well, it's our earliest conditioning, of fear to sense I'm separate, the world's out there, objectify the world, objectify others, see an enemy, look for difference, and then defend or attack. That's our primal conditioning. So that's one strong force through history. You see Genesis saying dominate the world, or
right.
The manifest destiny saying conquest, it's fine, go ahead, because Earth is other, and indigenous peoples are other to
right.
those that are dominant. And that othering has caused the suffering on this planet, and it keeps going today. And simultaneously, what makes us our true accomplishments have come out of collaboration, out of perceiving a sense of belonging, out of being able to network, out of being able to really sense, oh, we have the same experience, and care, and widen the circles of caring.
So for you, how do you deal with the pain of what's happening? I mean, you're very open, you work to reconnect all the time, but pain is painful. I mean, it's very hard. It's very hard to process these things.
So I just took a breath, because that's part of it. It's that sacred art of pausing, you know, that in some way we sense, oh, this moment I need to be in touch more. So that's one piece. But I think for me, what has been most important is intentionally leaning into where there is suffering. Like I force myself to pay attention to things I might not pay attention to. And so, for example, I have friends in Puerto Rico that are part of a training program I'm doing. Puerto Rico got creamed, and then it got creamed again. You know, they never got back their power. Houses gone. You know, drinking water not available. To really talk to them and find out the details, so I could sense, oh, what's it like being you?
We're going to ask you to speak a little.
Speak louder. I'm sorry. I warn them that I have a soft voice. It's that meditation voice, you know. I have friends in Pakistan, and it's hard for me to talk about the heartbreak when I really register a third of that country underwater, and what is it, like 70% of their crops gone, and the grain that's been stored for people to eat. I mean, it's like it was said twice or three times, it's not in the future. This suffering and crisis is now.
Right.
So you asked, how do I deal with it? I let myself feel it, because we have to feel it. There's a wise sage that different people would go to with their problems, and he'd swear them to silence. And then he'd say, I have one question, and that is, what are you unwilling to feel? And it's that. It's really sensing what is really hard to feel about our world. So that's the beginning. And then we need ways to, you use the word metabolize. We need to be able to metabolize.
Your approach, you have a wonderful approach and a wonderful meditation called RAIN. Recognize, allow, investigate, and nurture. It's about creating space for difficult feelings. Can you talk a little bit about that? And why would we want to invite them in? Can't we just be in denial?
You say that so pleadingly. It's that disconnect. The denial is the biggest threat to our survival. You know, all species survival is human denial. So that's why not.
Right, that's a good reason.
Just a little reminder. But we have to be able to be wise in how we open to it, because it doesn't help to re-traumatize ourselves. So this is a practice that we will do together, and it's a weave of mindfulness and compassion. And it's a way to bring that to whatever's going on for us. And for many of us, it's not going to be an immediate sense of anger about what's going on with the climate. It'll get put as anger towards somebody in our lives or towards ourselves, but we need to know how to work with the emotions that come up. So, for example, one woman who was, every time she would hear the news, she would feel that incredible anxiety about what's the future going to bring. And with RAIN, she would recognize the anxiety, take that pause, allow it, just say, okay, let it be here for the moment, investigate it, and sense the clutch in her body. And then the nurturing, that's the N of RAIN, was to say, thank you for trying to protect me. You know, I'm okay right now, but thank you. And in that there was more space, and she could begin to see a way of, and again it was mentioned, that she really needed to remember other people care, other people are feeling this too, which is so powerful. I mean, you open the session saying, never have there been so many people We have to remember that. That's one of the ways of nurturing, is remembering, oh, I'm with others that care. And then for another guy who was working for the EPA during the Trump administration, and he ended up leaving, but he was so filled with anger at all the ways that client science wasn't being paid attention to, and all the blocks to any effort to help, that he had to work with his anger with RAIN. And he recognized the anger, allow it to be there, investigate and find out under the anger there was fear. And under the fear, it's because he cared. And when he could get down to the caring, because always under anger, there's something we care about. When he could get down to the caring, then he could just say, you know, really be with himself. And I'll give you one more example, because it's despair, which is, you know, there really is, you know, climate grief, climate anxiety, climate despair. And I do a lot of online groups where we'll bring up things and practice RAIN together. And one person brought up her despair, the way the future looked, and another person did, and we did RAIN with that. Recognize the despair. Allow it. Let it be there. Don't push it away. Don't deny it. Don't judge it. Just make room. Investigate. And then again, under the despair, deep under the despair, there was this grief. That's what hadn't been being felt, this grief. And when there was really opening to the grief, it was back to that there's something I love that I don't want to lose.
Right.
And it's such a powerful question. What do we love that we don't want to lose? And can we let ourselves feel the pain that it's so threatened? The beauty is so threatened. The nature is so threatened, our nature, our beloved fellow beings' nature. So that's the way that RAIN can help to get in touch with really the love that's underneath every difficult emotion.
I'm going to try and build verklempt. So, you know, Joanna Macy, who's a great, you know, environmental grief teacher based out here in the Bay Area, has said that, you know, the same thing, like your pain is the other side of your love for the world, which is a lovely way to look at it. It's a measure of it.
And if you haven't run into Joanna Macy, she
93.
is awesome. She's wonderful. And she really talks about if you open to the despair and grief, you actually find the love and the empowerment.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I did one of her workshops. It was wonderful. So we're here in San Francisco, obviously, at a climate conference talking about potential technical solutions to the crisis. How much faith should we, or do you, put into the notion that tech could possibly save us?
You know, I think of one general of the Army who said that we're a world of, you know, nuclear genius and ethical infants. And that's so powerful, because think of it. I mean, we need technology, and technology is our tool and can do amazing, amazing things. So I bow to it. And if we don't wake up really emotionally and spiritually to know our belonging, if we don't wake up to realize it's not nature out there, that it's our nature, that this Earth's body is our larger body, if we don't wake up to know that interdependence, or what Thich Nhat Hanh calls interbeing, he says what we have to learn to do is to feel the earth crying inside us. If that doesn't happen, without that awakening, there will not be the political will, the emotional will, the spirit to get behind the changes that need to happen.
Do you sense a shift in that in the work you do?
I sense more and more beings waking up, and we need a critical mass. I mean, that's what this is. This is an expression. I mean, I really feel so much of a gratitude towards the times holding this in each one of you. I can feel the energy and the heart and the care. That's what's needed. And we can't do it alone. I mean, we have to know that belonging. And again, Hannah and Leah, a bow, because we will not have the energy, we won't have the trust in what's possible if we don't get together.
So shifting a little bit, what are ways we can do to connect, maybe in how we are eating, or what are practical things we can do to connect?
So one thing is, and this is really kind of an inquiry for you, is do you share with others how you feel about really the collapse of life systems, of what's really happening? I mean, how often do you talk from the heart with others? Because I've found the times that I do, and I really am doing it from that place where I'm in touch, there's a healing moment in that we love this world together. So one thing is just to talk with each other. You know, the movie Don't Look Up, it's like, look up together and hold hands is one piece. You know, I love the word hope when it's understood properly. I'm not into the kind of optimism that hitches what's going to happen to certain outcomes.
Hopium.
Hopium,
Yeah.
Thank you, hopium. And hopium is, what happens with hopium is that we then don't think we need to do anything. We forget that we're part of this evolving world that needs to participate. But there's radical hope, and I think of it as spiritual hope, that intuits the possibility and stays open to the possibility of really love and awareness guiding us. It's like the Dalai Lama had a beautiful, beautiful reminder to a group of teachers, which was to really trust the power of heart and awareness to awaken through all circumstances. To put our trust in that and know that if we awaken in that way, the technology will be used and empowered in a direction that can make a difference.
Hannah and Leah also spoke about, you know, and being very aware of the reality of burnout on this, because if you're fixed to a certain outcome, your heart is going to break over and over on this. And you have talked about the distinction between empathy and compassion. So can you describe the distinction and why nurturing one over the other might help ward off?
This is good, and this is neuroscience's refinement that I think is really, really useful. Empathy is when you can feel another's feelings. You care, you're feeling what's going on. Compassion has that, but it also has the quality of mindfulness that has a big enough perspective so you don't get hitched or possessed or overwhelmed by what you're feeling. And also compassion is geared to go then act because you care. In fact, the compassion center in the relational network in the brain is very close to the motor cortex. So with compassion, it moves to action, and we need to act. I mean, action absorbs anxiety, but it does more than that. When we act, we start realizing our belonging. We feel part of it. I mean, right now, my energies are going in specific towards vote. You know, save democracy, because it feels like without democracy, it's going to be very hard to get behind anything necessary to save the planet. And I'm working with people on just the feeling like we care and we're trying. We don't know the outcome, but we need to try.
You've described sort of this, you've used a metaphor of being lost in a forest and making a clearing for yourself. And there's a poem by Martha Postlewaite. Oh, I hope I said it right.
Is it right?
That imagines this. I'm wondering if you could read this poem, and then we'll go into the meditation. Okay.
Yeah, this is my cue to pull out my piece of paper, because I don't have it memorized. But so what we're going to do is I am going to read this to you and then invite you into a short rain meditation. So even now you might, if you need to make any adjustments in how you're sitting, if you want to put down a pad of paper,
Turn off phone.
you know, just invite yourself into.
Yeah, maybe turn off a phone if you have them on.
Oh, please. So this poem by Martha Postlewaite speaks to the necessity that if we're to metabolize, if we're to process the enormity of what's here, we need to be able to pause. We need to create some space. We need to bring our attention inward and tend to our inner life. She writes this, she says, do not try to save the whole world or do anything grandiose. Instead, create a clearing in the dense forest of your life and wait there patiently until the song that is yours to sing falls into your open-cupped hands and you recognize and greet it. Only then will you know how to give yourself to the world so worthy of rescue. Don't try to save the whole world or do anything grandiose. Instead, create a clearing in the dense forest of your life. Create a clearing in the dense forest of your life. So in that spirit, I'd like to invite you, if you haven't already, to close your eyes or let your gaze be downcast and let your attention go inward. Take these few moments to pause and sense the possibility of getting a little more intimate with your inner life. You might feel the breath and take a few long, deep breaths. Let the breath help to collect your attention, to bring you right here. You might scan your body and sense what wants to let go a little. Maybe your shoulders. Maybe softening your hands. Relaxing the belly and letting the breath go deep into the abdomen. With the practice of rain, we bring our attention to places where we might feel stuck, reactive. So to give you a taste, we'll call this a light rain. Give you a taste, just to invite you to scan your life right now and sense anywhere that you feel you leave yourself in some way. You get reactive, either angry at another person, anxious. Perhaps you turn on yourself in self-judgment. Just looking through the last couple of days and sense someplace, maybe it's repeating, where you find you kind of go into a trance, you get smaller, get tighter. Might be in a relationship, might be at work, might be in relating to yourself, maybe an addictive behavior. I would steer away from something traumatic, because that won't serve you in a brief reflection. When you've arrived on something, go right to a situation, a very real situation that exemplifies it. And see the surroundings you're in. If there's another person, the look on their face, perhaps hearing the words that are said. So if you're watching a movie, go right to the part of the movie, the frame where you get triggered, where you get reactive, most angry or fearful, defensive, down on yourself, whatever it is. Freezing the frame there. Begin rain by just recognizing whatever the strongest emotion is that's going on. And you might mentally whisper it. And there may be more than one, maybe two. Might be anger, frustration, fear, anxiety, sorrow, shame. It's mentally whispering what you're aware of. And then allow it to be there without adding any judgment. Some way you're saying, okay, this belongs. It's like the waves in the ocean. This wave belongs. Let it be there. And you might start investigating by just sensing, well, what am I believing right now? What's the limiting belief right now, that deep belief about myself or about others? That I'm failing, that I'm unworthy, I'm unlovable, that I've hurt others, that I can't trust others, that something very bad's about to happen. What's the belief? And whether or not you immediately hop on a belief, and it does, either way is fine, feel in your body where the feeling is the strongest. The throat, the chest, the belly. Let your attention go there, that this is where feeling is. Maybe this is what you've been unwilling to feel. But part of creating a clearing is to feel what's here. And as a way of supporting that, you might put your hand gently on your heart. If you've never done it before, just explore that you can have the touch be tender. So you're actually communicating a tender presence with what's here. Feeling where there's vulnerability. Being present with it. And just ask that place in you, what do you most need right now? You know, what's the kind of comfort that you need? Do you need to trust in yourself? Do you need some deep kind of spiritual hope? Do you need forgiveness, acceptance, love, being held? And as if you could be listening from the most wise, witnessing part of you, just offer some message inward right now, some message to yourself that you sense will be healing. It might be simply, I'm here and I'm not leaving. Or it might be like that woman I mentioned, thank you for trying to protect me. I'm okay right now. Or it might be, trust your goodness. Or just, it's okay. But something to bring you presence and comfort and tenderness. And just notice what happens. Notice what happens when you offer yourself a message of nurturing. As one psychologist said, it's not survival of the fittest, it's survival of the nurtured. That the beginning of reconnecting with our world is to reconnect with our inner life. Feeling, breathing, sensing a larger sense of your being. Notice the shift from when you started, whether you were feeling the anger or the fear or the grief or the guilt, to a little more presence and spaciousness. And then as you sense your world, there's a really beautiful inquiry about how we then move forward. And it is, what would love have me do today? So you might reframe that in any language that works for you. What does your deepest heart want for these next minutes, next days, next months? What would love have you do? And this might be an inquiry you take with you as you move forward in time, but for now you might take a few full breaths. And as you're ready, if your eyes are closed, open your eyes, come back. And thank you for being willing to explore rain. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Tara. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.